Hi guys, Zach the Greg Slayer here, and I'm gonna talk to you guys for the final time. I know you guys have heard my rants on my stream, but I just want to talk about the melee issue right now. Now, the melee issue has been going on for quite a while. Ever since T95 dual wield weapons came out, things have been a little bit dicey, and things have been kind of becoming a little bit too ridiculous when it comes to melee escaping. But I'm gonna go over just this slide that I made, talking about all the issues and how I feel about them, and then my research that I've done and the math that I can provide you guys with. Because there's so many questions like about melee, and like everyone keeps asking me, well, like is it worth it? Is EZK worth it? Is all these weapons and switches worth it? And well, we're gonna talk about that right now. Moving on. So we're going to go over weapons, ultimates, accessories, inventory space, and where things are counterintuitive. This is very self-explanatory. I feel like all these things are a big issue and they should be addressed, and I put in a lot of time to actually make this, surprisingly. It's been quite a roller coaster. And it took me a while to get all the information together and then find numbers, find equations to figure these mathematic issues out. But so we'll continue. So weapon issues. Tier 95 Lang Swords requires a Dren to use to hit with Grim up to 19Ks. This is about Smoke Cloud. When doesn't when it doesn't have the base damage to hit that high in most places, right? So you're not going to be using this weapon spec often. The good thing about this weapon is definitely that you could use Hurricane and Destroy, but that's the only good things about it. The weapon spec is very niche. It's not used everywhere, and I wouldn't say it's make or break in most PVM scenarios. So I kind of feel like it's very underwhelming. And you have to spend adrenaline for the spec, as well. It's not very good. I feel like it just definitely lacks in a lot of departments. So, yeah, moving on. So, weapon issues. The EZK, the exit kill. Oh my god, boys. We have a lot of stuff to cover. A lot of stuff. I have a few slides just about this weapon. So, we're going to start in with the weapon special attack in an EOF with a spear, right? With the spear. Igneous Cleave, special attack. Slash your target with fire and stone, causing them to bleed. 62% to 109% initial ability damage, followed by 6 hits of 30 to 105 ability damage for every 2.4 seconds over 14.4 seconds. Damage from this effect increased by 5% per hit. And if the target is hit with a bleed or burn ability while effect Igneous Cleave, they suffer an additional hit. Meaning that you use a lot of bleeds to get the stacks on the weapon up high enough so it can do its maximum full potential. In most PVM scenarios, I find that I typically only get it up to 4 stacks, typically, because I'm usually using thresholds and just dumping as much thresholds and adrenaline as possible into my rotations. The use for a 5th bleed, I usually end up just saving it for some bosses, so I can use Dismember, and then I can get off the boss, for instance, like Melee Raksha, do the pulls, and when I go back to fight, Melee Raksha, right, after I do the pulls, he still has the Abyssal Parasite effect, which is why I don't have to actually extend and use my Dismember there, because if you're going for P2 skips, right, if you're going for Mine skips, right, no orbs on P2 at all, you're not going to be, you're not, most of the time, ever going to want to actually use that last Dismember. But, okay. So, let's talk about the EZK. Why is it very Well, I'm going to go into this right now. Critical hit of the EZK does not give the bleed effect max damage, meaning that if I crit, if you get Fury, right, Greater Fury, right, and then you crit with it, and then you go to use the EZK, the only initial hit of the EZK will deal that critical hit damage, but the bleed effect afterwards is totally random between if it does its low and high amounts of damage. And there is lows and highs. And people, people think that, oh, it's just one set amount of bleed damage every time. No, it actually is RNG based, which makes it even more terrible. So, so the max hit with the EZK is 2,171 damage to start, and with 4 bleeds. And this is the number chart that I pulled up here that I actually, with 4 bleeds out of dummy, tested out, multiple times. And yeah, so we're starting at 2,000, and we end up at the end of the rotation, right? At the end of the EZK, we end up with 2,800 and 3,000. That's a typo. 3,891. At the end of it. So the max 2,171, and then the end of it, right? Like except 14, most of the hits, 13 out of 14 hits, right? You'd be at 3,000. So 3,891. It's not very good. I mean, this gives us a max damage by itself of 37,402. With Gloves of the Passage, the effect the entire way, if you're using Havoc the entire way, this number will change to 44,882. And if you're using Gloves of the Passage and Zerkora, this number will also increase to 49,372. Now, when it comes to your Overload Prayer and Dragon Battle Axe, those things do not affect the base hit of the EZK and its bleed effect. The only thing that will affect it is if you are on Zerkora, right? And if you are on a Slayer task. Slayer task, Zerkora, you're going to see higher numbers than this, boys. This is just for if you're not on a Slayer task, right? And you are on Zerkora at just normal places, like places you would go that, normally, right? Without any of these conditions. Now, talking about the minimal hits, oh my god, guys. I was wondering why I felt like this weapon just didn't perform well most of the time. And its lows are just too low. Minimal hit EZK start is 644 damage for 4 bleeds, right? With 4 bleeds stacked onto it, extending it to 13 total hits instead of 14 total hits. So starting at the lowest end here, we have 644 damage, and then scaling up to only 1,151 damage. This is basically like you just spent 50% of Dren for a 13-hit Dismember. That is horrific. Yeah, that's terrible. Minimum damage by itself is 11,377. We combine all these numbers. Now, with Gloves of the Passage, you're at 13,625, right? Without Zerkora, and with Zerkora, you get 15,016. You're like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, so with Zerkora, your max is up to almost 50,000 damage, Gloves of the Passage, and then doing the same thing, just with RNG, will only merit 15,000 damage. Now, this is terrible. Like, this is awful. And this is awful because going from 50,000 damage to 15k damage is too ridiculous it's too ridiculous. It's definitely too low. Like, just the average hits of these both combined, right, is 24,389 damage without Zerkora, right? And now with Zerkora and Gloves, right, we are looking at a whopping 32,000 average damage. Now, if you don't wear gloves, right? If you don't use Gloves of the Passage, boys, and you're not on Zerkora, don't expect this weapon to hit high, because it won't on average. Statistically and number-wise, it just won't hit high enough to even be kind of worth it. Now, if you do incorporate all the switches and, you incorporate all the switches and you incorporate, like, the gloves, the glove swapping, being on Zerkora, trying to maximize your damage, well, you're already setting yourself up for kind of failure, because off a Slayer task, you're only seeing 32,000 damage on average, which is the reason why I kind of don't like this weapon. I kind of wish it was a lot stronger than this, and its lows weren't this low. And that's why I feel like it's very underwhelming. You might as well use Overpower. Like, if Overpower isn't in your rotation, have no fear. Instead of use the EZK normally, you should just use Overpower, because it's going to probably hit higher on average anyway at 24,000 damage to 32,000. On Grim, you would hit 30,000 damage, right? So, yeah, not far off, and you don't have to spend max cash to actually get this piece of garbage, but, you know, we'll keep going. Now, weapon issues. Talking about the Abyssal Scourge. Now, this is a huge one. This is a huge topic that all of my friends on Twitch and everyone has been coming to me to, and I was done with not giving them a good answer. So here is your answer, boys. This is the issue with the Abyssal Scourge and why I've been saying the things I've been saying, and this is proof right here that I am not lying. It is good, but most places it is not good, and I'll tell you why it's not good right here. It's better than using the main hand Lang regardless of wherever you are, technically, because of the effect with the helmet, but it's not, the damage is so minimal at places where you can't get to 50 stacks and keep them that why even bother? So, talking about the Scourge effect. So, in this effect, the Abyssal Scourge does not get affected by damage boosting effects. So, like, if you're using Zerk Aura or you're, like, on a Slayer or Reaper task, this weapon does not get increased damage. It says on it, it gives a base amount of bleed damage. And this chart also shows that as well. So this means that there is no changing of these damage parameters. This is what it is. You know, this is the potential and the max damage that each hit is going to hit. Obviously, if you use Gloves of the Passage, it will increase those hits, but that's about it. That's the only damage modifying thing you could use to make it hit better. So the things that are, so all stacks disappear if you're away from your target 4 GCDs. This is a big one. Now, there's people that I've watched, right, that they'll and I've done this myself, and it took a while to get used to it, but it's extremely annoying. And I'm gonna you have 4 GCDs, right, a total of 9 seconds, right? You have 9 seconds away from your target before all those stacks go poof, and all of your work was for nothing. And basically what this means is, okay, when you use an ability, right, if you want to go back off your target to charge up Barge, right, it's really only 3 GCDs after you use a basic attack with the whip equipped. So you have 3 global cooldowns, right? So as soon as you see your Barge light up, have your whip equipped and barge with it, and it'll refresh those stacks and you won't lose them forever. This becomes problematic when you deal with mechanics that, you know, you spend a little bit extra time to deal with, which means that when you off the boss and do something else, all those stacks disappear. It does an explosion kind of damage, which is negligible at best. And, you know, that is the problem with it. Now, so this still suffers from a minimal hit just minimal hit garbage. We'll call it that, because I don't even know why it had to actually have a minimal hit. Like, I don't think it should have had a minimal hit, and we'll get into the reasons why it shouldn't even have a minimal hit. So, I did all of the math and numbers. I added all the lows and highs on this table, for example, and had them all written down right here on the screen. So this is minimal abyssal hit 1 to 10 is 1,025 total damage. And then like 11 to 20 is 3,000 total damage. Then 21 to 30, right, is 4,774 damage by itself. 31 to 40 is 6,347, and 41 to 50 is 8,500 damage for minimal. And then the max is the same, 1713 for 1 through 10, 4,837 for max hit from 11 to 20 stacks, 21 through 30, right, or 20 to 30, I should say, or 21 to 30 is 7,962. 31,000 through 40 is 11,085, and 41 through 50 is 14,210, which gives us an average of 22,644 overall minimal damage. And then with Gloves of the Passage, this number would change to 27,174 for minimal, and then its max would be 39,807 to using Gloves of the Passage, which brings it up to 47,768. Now, you may ask, like, how much time, Zach, could, how much time does it take to build up your Abyssal Parasite stacks? Well, you can definitely achieve it in 1 minute. Effectively. You'll be able to, you can be faster with it as well if you'd like, but in an optimal rotation that I do, especially, I find that getting to 15 1 minute is usually something that is definitely doable, and it's not hard to do at all. If you dismember at the start of your Berserk rotation, right, with the whip itself, right, and then do your Zerk rotation, and, you know, and then, because each individual bleed you cast with this weapon, right, say if a Dismember is 7 hits, you know, for example, when the Dismember is over, it would add and stack 7 hits, so it would be 7 charges of Abyssal Parasite, because your bleed counts as, each hit of the bleed actually counts towards adding stacks, so it's cool, like, that's cool, alright, that's a faster way to charge it up, nice. So average damage without passage is 31,225, and average damage with passage is 37,470. Once again, this doesn't get affected by Zerk Aura or anything, except using Gloves of the Passage, increasing it by 20% for the duration, right? So I didn't put in the calculations. I didn't put in the calculations for if, for instance, you're using Gloves of Passage all the time. But well, I did somewhat. But this is not the main issue. The main issue is that we're going to move on to the next slide, and we'll talk about this issue. Now, extended. You can get 50 stacks in 1 minute, yes. And this is a video of me doing it right here, boys. So you can get 1 stack per minute using Dismember with your whip equipped twice, right? So the problem is that there's only 33 global cooldowns in 1 minute, meaning that you would actually never get all the 50 hits on the skill that I previously showed before, because simply you get 1 bleed hit per global cooldown. Thus, you will never ever actually get 50 hits in. So the whip damage per minute on average would be decreased by duration. You know, if like, because of the fact that like you're not getting in 50 hits of the bleed like I added on the scales before, you would get 33 bleed hits because you can get 33 ticks, or not ticks, global cooldown in global GCDs in per minute. So your bleeds are only hit 33 times out of an entire minute, because you only can spread that far with as many global cooldowns as possible, GCDs. So if you really calculate this, which I did it here, right? I have another slide for this, so don't worry, guys. I'm going to get into the calculation where the math is. So you only achieve, technically speaking, 66% of your bleed stacks for the first minute, and this is only for the first minute you're using this whip, right? To build, and the damage for building the stacks. And so, because there's only 33 GCDs, it's only 66% of damage you can only achieve, because, but like, calculation would be total average from bleeds hits combined with Gloves of Passage as well, right? So average damage with the passage is 37,470, right? And these are the conclusive numbers, and we'll move on to this slide where you can see the math equation for it. Oh, wrong slide. Okay, so calculation would be a total average of bleed hits combined with Gloves of Passage and without. So with Gloves of the Passage, Formula 1, Step 1, you take that average number that I calculated, right? Take the average number of damage that you did, right, which is 31,225, and you would multiply this by 0.33, because we're trying to find how much we would decrease that average value, because we only hit 33% of the bleed damages, the damage on the scale doesn't actually technically go off because of GCDs. So then we just take that 10,304 and we subtract it from 31,000. So you end up achieving 20,921 damage in total, with amount of, on average, with GCDs included, right? Now, this is without Gloves of the Passage. Now, with Gloves of Passage, you would take Step 1, 37,470 average damage from adding the entire skill together, and then we would multiply this by 0.33, which is the difference of, because of the lack of GCDs, you're required to hit all 50 attacks, or 50 bleed, bleed ticks, because you only, per minute. So then you would take that 12,365, and then you subtract it from 37,470, which you would get at this bottom number, 25,105. So using Gloves of the Passage, right, on average, you're hitting around 25k with using the whip when you're using, Gloves of the Passage, all the time, non-stop. Now, this is only for the first minute of using the weapon. Now, finding the DPM of it after you get all 50 stacks is way, way, way easier. All you'd have to do is just take the minimal max hit for the 50th stack, and you just apply it per 33 GCDs, which is 49,479 DPM. Which that is incredible. Once you build it up, and this is average, it could still hit higher than this, or it can hit lower than this. Like, it could have the potential of, you know, it could have the potential to be great. You know, like, it could hit up to 70,000 damage DPM, or it can hit less than this. It can hit up to, 30,000 DPM if you're unlucky. You know? So, too much, the lows are too low, and the highs are just right. But the lows are just way too low, and I think everyone can, I mean, in my experience, everyone has seen this, and moving on. Ultimates. So Meteor Strike is still 100% Adren cost. Why is this a thing? Like, I find it, like, I'm going places as a meme, basically using magic and using Insight Fear, using G-Conk and 2 basics, which is 3 GCDs, just to use Tsunami with Inge on my target, like whatever I'm fighting, in order to get the effect of Meteor Strike, because it's just too much Adren to actually spend 100% and get to 100% upright, or 90% if you're using Vig. It's kind of redundant. I think everything in the game should, well, any type of Adren building ultimate should kind of be very cheap nowadays, especially with Magic being one of the styles that you can use, Tsunami for such low Adren cost, and barely any setup, so Berserk is, so Berserk is the least damaging ultimate, with the downside of taking more damage for using it. I mean, the statement is very true. It's the less damaging ultimate, technically, if you're comparing side by side with, like DPM wise. It's the less damaging ultimate because it's the shortest. Also, the damage potential is not there, and you're taking more damage for using it, which is kind of like an ancient dinosaur of balancing it out. And I mean, like, they released custom fit trim masterwork to mitigate some of this damage you take from, obviously, things being an MD usually do a little bit stronger damage to you, right? But not only that, I mean, also you can heal back with Soul Split or using a Vamp Scrimshaws to mitigate the extra damage from Berserk rather than just changing Berserk, which is kind of weird. And just making it so Berserk you didn't take extra damage from Berserk. If we didn't take extra damage from Berserk, the extra 50% more damage, we wouldn't need custom fit trim masterwork. It's just it's simple as that. I mean, people make it out to be so complicated. No. If we didn't have, this is coming from me, I have experience at, like, most high-level PVM scenarios, but a lot of the new content I'm very naive at. But, like, what I will say is that if we didn't take extra damage from Berserk, we wouldn't really need custom fit trim masterwork. And I mean, like, I think it's true. Now, Overpower, so, like, now talking about Overpower. Overpower is good, but it only achieves its true potential if it hits extremely high and with a Grimoire. And usually too much Adrenaline for an optimal DPS rotation in your Berserk. I find this to be true as well. If you use Overpower at the end of your Berserk, you won't be able to use it if you're trying to use a ZGS. If you use Overpower after your Assault in the beginning of your Berserk, after you bleed your Assault, right, you won't be able to build to your second and third threshold, right, and have a lot of Adrenaline after the rotation is over. So you're really locked into only using Overpower outside of Berserk rotation unless you get a Relentless prog or you get lucky with your Adrenaline, right? And I mean, that's not optimal. I think it's very stupid. I think the damage is once again, the high is very good, but the lows, right, and the low end of Overpower is kind of it's not very good at all. It's better than nothing, but I mean it's better than Dragon Claws, which Dragon Claws, I mean, is the same Adren cost, basically. So it's 45% Adren for D-Claws with Vig. But, I just feel like this is... I feel like it's very good if it decides to hit 15Ks for both hits. If you don't hit 15Ks for both hits, it's kind of like, well, I mean, what else were you going to use anyway kind of deal, right? It's good, but its true potential usually doesn't get reached if you don't meet its parameters and if you're unlucky. Moving on. So, accessories that I personally have a I have a vendetta over the armor spikes. Man, so, we'll talk about the Abyssal armor spikes. So, same effect as a whip, but instead of 100% Adrenaline, not 100% Adrenaline, 100% chance to add a spike, a stack of Abyssal Parasite like the Whip for using a basic attack or a bleed, right? This this is a 25% chance. Now, this is so negligible. Now, the reason why this is completely negligible is because if you are fighting a boss that attacks you very slowly and has no, attacks you slowly, and it doesn't have very fast attacks, you basically don't really build many stacks from the spikes, which is like why even upgrade them at this point. Just use the Whip. You may get some per hit, right? Through, sure, over time with like 20 hits, you might get, technically speaking, if you're, on 20 hits, right? A quarter of that, so you get 5. So if you take 20 hits, which could be like your entire boss fight, like for basically the first minute, you only get +5 stacks, and that is terrible. They should have just kept it at 100% or even 50 or 75%. 25% is way too low to even merit upgrading your spikes and using them. Now, Gloves of the Passage. Now, 20% damage bonus for bleeds for 10 seconds. So, in order to effectively use these gloves, if you're at a boss where you are using weapon poison, you are gonna have to juggle these bad boys every 10 seconds for basically your whole 3, 4, 5, 6 minute kill every 10 seconds. Now, why? Like, it is awful. No one likes doing it. I don't know why, I don't know why they just didn't get this together and just or even combine Cinderbanes together. It just ruins the entire, it ruins the entire immersion of Meleescape. It just takes you out of it. It's more annoying than it is good, and it's very niche. The gloves are a good effect. They're not niche. You want to use them all the time for 20% more bleed damage all the time. But the conditions of doing them, it's just too ridiculous for what they give. So some people, sometimes me, I will just be like, you know what, I just want to camp Cinders, or I just want to camp, Gloves of the Passage. I'm tired of it. I have so many things in my inventory space, and I'm swapping so many things that, why? Just why? It is awful. This is a good idea. Doesn't work well with Cinderbanes. If you combine these together, then it would be absolutely 100% a game-breaking upgrade for Melee, and everyone will feel it everywhere, and it would be minus. You wouldn't have to bring an inventory spot or waste one for gloves. Moving on. So, talking about the inventory space issues. One moment. So, on the left here, we have the new Langs, right? Before the helm came out, the whip, Gloves of the Passage came out, on the left, we have the Guthix Rest to take the place, right, of free inventory space you can freely use. And this is with only using two spiritual prayers, where most of the time people bring around 3 to 4 spirituals to Juicy Ripper Demon with Melee. This is a very Melee thing, because it's like Ripper Demon's still really good with Melee, and, you need to use the Ripper in most places that you go. So you have a total of 10 inventory spaces with only 2 spiritual prayers, right? And if the boss is poisonable and you need to use Bladed Dive during the fight, this is the setup that you're bringing. Now, I meant to put, what is it? You actually have more inventory space. I have another pair of Laceration Boots by accident in my inventory. So now that I think about it, you have 11 spaces. So I apologize for that. I thought the image was good. With all the 3, with also 3 rune pouches as well, on the left here, which is meta. You need to bring 3 rune pouches in almost everywhere you go to get a max efficiency. Now, in the next picture, this is where my point becomes extremely valid, and this is what I find to be really bad about Melee, especially if you're in a place where you can use all of your best in slot gear. So after Whip, easy K, with the FSOA on the bottom here, right, being for a hard copy Easy K, which I currently do not have at this very moment. I used to have one, and then I was like, you know what, I'm just tired of this, so I got rid of it. So if you compare these two, right, you'd have -2 inventory spaces, because now you're bringing the new whip along, and now you're bringing laceration boots when you need to go bladed dive with your scythe, right? And then also you have your Cinderbanes that are in your inventory with your new hard copy Easy K, which this limits you now to 7 inventory spaces, which is very unfortunate. 7 inventory spaces barely will get you through any type of huge engagement, like say melee Carapac. Like it's terrible. Like 7 inventory spaces definitely won't get you there, and this is without actually adding in a helmet, a Trim Masterwork helmet, to keep your set effect for custom fit Trim Masterwork. This is the biggest deal I've been talking about. Now, like, the whole point, like, so if you're going to use laceration boots, right, and you're using the helmet, you're only wearing 2 pieces of Trim Masterwork, which are your Trim Masterwork plate body and legs. Guys, like, you would have to, if you were going to use laceration boots, right, and keep the helmet on, you will not be able to use custom fit Trim Masterwork set effect, which is ridiculous because the whole point of using custom fit Trim Masterwork is literally because you take more damage from Berserk. So this is counterintuitive to the whole point of actually releasing a helmet. The helmet should have been something combined with the Trim Masterwork helmet, so like you could use and camp the laceration boots, so you can bladed dive with a 2H weapon or scythe. You know, so you lost even more inventory space, which is incredibly bad. Oh my god, it's bad. You know, so like definitely a lot of inventory space on the left here. Barely any space over here, plus you added way more actions and stuff that you would need to do, and less friendly for any type of beginner or even mid-level PVMers, even some high-level PVMers to actually want to keep using the style. Like, very, very bad. Like, terrible. Moving on. So, counterintuitive things, once again. Why would they release a T92 weapon? Main hand weapon for melee. Like, after they released T95 weapons, literally right around the corner, like, way before it. Like, it makes no sense. Why? Like, why, dude? It makes no sense. Like, an attachment for the Langs would have been a more logical solution to this whole ordeal. And you wouldn't have to buy a new weapon and bring it with you everywhere to get less damage for your thresholds and basics than your T95 weapon, but get the Abyssal Parasite effect. It's just very counterintuitive thing. Like, I don't agree with it. I think it was just terrible idea. I don't know why. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, oh, you know, it's like they were at the bar, you know, and they're like, you know what? You know what'd be a cool idea? Let's release a new melee main hand weapon. You know, why? Well, I mean, like, we kind of messed up with Easy K. Let's just, you know, put a band-aid over it and give you some more bleeds to actually make the weapon worth it. Which it didn't even, like, and let's not change the Easy K at all. Let's still keep it as trash as it always was on average, so. Now, releasing a new helmet of Jaws of the Abyss when you have Trim Masterwork. This is what I was talking about. Use the laceration boots, not camping laceration boots, which sucks. It does suck. And then, let's talk about the Lang spec that you can, that you can barely use at all of your places, because melee lacks the base damage to actually just have the use of the spec itself. You have niche places you can bring it to dungeons and, you know, on Slayer task and a Carapac. You use it at like 2 or 3 places where like we should have had an effect, right? Should have just had an effect, right? Where it would just increase our damage maybe, like passively, or even activate it for a little damage boost or something to our Zerk rotation. No. We just get this niche damage cap breaking thing that is just so... Ugh. It is terrible. Like, and this is why I'm just very frustrated with melee. It's because all of these things are just absolutely awful. And just take away from the core, like, just being relevant and just melee being good. And guess what? With melee, with all these upgrades, it is still worse than all the other combat styles. And it's just crazy how many things are wrong with it. Like, and how they just absolutely ruined it. And yeah, guys, I hope you can now understand my little rant and why I'm so frustrated with all these things, because the RNG thresholds and the terribleness of it, I'm telling you, it's the lows for melee are like super bad. Like everything is just way too low damage, everything takes too long to use and set up, and what is it for, really? Like a niche, like maybe like like if you do set it up right, getting there right, you do get extra, like an extra 60 to 70k DPM. Oh my god, it's a godsend. Like 60 to 70k DPM, sure, it's good. But on its lowest end, how much did it really improve it? Not much at all. But then you have to go through the agonizing pain of switching, an agonizing pain of just getting terrible RNG that you just can't control. You know, that's really it. You just can't control super low hits. They released the Gloves of Passage to make the bleeds 20% stronger. But guess what, guys? 20% of garbage is still garbage. And, I mean, it is what it is. You can't control like your base bleed hits at all whatsoever, and the lows are way too low to be even decent. You know, so, like, so, the final verdict. Is the EZK and the Abyssal Scourge good? Yes, they are good, but you feel like an absolute clown using them, because oh my god, you're in a roller coaster of just inconsistency. And that's really basically it. So I'll catch you all later. Zach the Greg Slayer here. Peace.